Hey folks, John Thompson, Spring Framework Guru. So in this section of the course, we're going to be looking at Spring Profiles. Spring Profiles came along in Spring 3.1, and it is a very powerful concept that we now have available in our toolbox of configuring Spring. And what it is, it's a way to set an active profile, and beans that are marked with this profile will be brought into the context. And if a bean's not marked with a profile, it'll get brought into the context. If a bean is marked with a non-active profile, Spring's going to ignore it and not going to bring it into the context. And a typical way that we might want to use this is we might set up an in-memory H2 database for our testing for use with Hibernate. And we might give that a dev profile. And then we might have a MySQL database that we have in QA. And maybe we give that a QA profile. And maybe we have an Oracle database that runs in production, and we could give that a production profile. So now we have 3 different databases, but depending on what the active profile is, that's going to be what data source gets injected into Spring. So this is a pretty common use case. So we can see we have 3 completely different relational database technologies. Even though they're using Hibernate, we're going to have different JDBC URLs, we're going to have different usernames, we're going to have different passwords, different server locations. So all this is going to be different database drivers. So there's a number of things that are going to be different depending on which data source we want injected, and that's going to can be controlled by Spring Profiles. And by setting the active profile, Spring will know which bean we want wired in. And the important thing to remember is, like I said at the beginning of this, is if the bean does not have an active profile, it's always going to get brought in. If the bean does have a profile annotation on it, it's only going to get brought into the Spring context when that profile is active. So if I have a dev profile, beans marked with a production profile are not going to get brought into the context. And likewise, the opposite case. So the beans with a dev profile, if we're running under a production active profile, the dev profile beans are going to get ignored by Spring when the context starts up, but the ones marked with the production profile are going to get brought in. So this is a very, very powerful thing that Spring introduced for configuring this, because as we develop enterprise applications, I've been in environments where we have 5 or 6 environments that we're migrating the application through, and each environment's a little bit different. It has some different requirements. So that between the profiles and properties and how we manage the properties, you have a lot of tools to manage the enterprise application getting migrated through these different environments. So in this section, we're going to take a look at setting the profiles, how we do that in the Spring configuration, how we activate profiles, and how we can do that within Spring as well.